Hi, welcome to another edition of Hawk Off the Press after the final score. I'm John Steppe, the incoming Gazette Hawkeye football reporter, and I'm joined by Leah Vann, the outgoing Hawkeye football reporter. Leah, it was an interesting game here today.
It was interesting. It was slow. I felt like Iowa probably should have dominated this game a lot more than it did. But I think also when you're playing non-conference opponents, you can tend to play down to the competition. I know they say they don't. I know no team is going to admit that they did. But I think, it is the second week in a row where you're playing a non-conference opponent. It's like, okay, where's the energy? Where's the edge? It's not like the first 2 weeks of excitement that Iowa just had.
No, and you look ahead, too, and there's a shortened week, and, as much as they'll say that doesn't affect their preparation for Colorado State, you have to think that they are thinking ahead to a Maryland team that isn't necessarily a powerhouse, but a team that could potentially give you a little bit of trouble that one day less of preparation for them. So maybe there was a little bit of looking ahead today.
Maybe. And I think also we were checking the Maryland-Kent State score at halftime, which Maryland was already had 24 points on Kent State at half. And, by comparison, I don't remember Iowa being the same.
No.
And Iowa had a little bit of a slower start, but then I think it ended up being around the same score in the end. I think Maryland was like 37 to something when it came to that game against Kent State. And, Iowa obviously beat Kent State 30 to, what was it, 7?
Yes, 30-7.
30-7.
It's a late night here.
They are all running together, y'all, all the games. we just had to re-record this because we were talking about, I was like, when was the last time Iowa allowed 14 points by an opposing team? And I remember, Iowa State got 17 points on Iowa, but Indiana...
Just turn the calendar back to...
Indiana only got 6 points on Iowa. So, but Iowa has still gone 26 games without allowing 25 points. So there you go.
And you really look at it, that second half defense looked good today. The first half, not so much. Where I kind of looked at the third down conversions for Colorado State between the first half and the second half. And on paper, you would not think that the same defensive unit was out there in the second half that was in the first half. 9 for 13 Colorado State was on third down in the first half. And then 2 for 10 in the second half. You win a lot more games at that 9 for 13 rate than you do at that 2 for 10 rate.
Oh, certainly. And they really did. Trey McBride, who was obviously a huge concern, that big one of the top tight ends in the country who plays for Colorado State. I know he was he was going to be a tough guy for them to even replicate in practice, to compete against, and then let alone play in real time. But they did. I think he didn't get even over 100 yards today, which was like his first game that was not 100 yards in a while. I checked it back to like last season, but I don't remember the number. So they did a good job of closing him out, but he still had a couple of good plays.
Yeah, and you think about it too, you wonder, okay, if maybe some of that extra attention drawn to him maybe allowed for some other plays to happen.
I will say their quarterback was like their leading rusher for a while.
Yes. It is a team that likes to run the ball, and they will use all of their tools, including their quarterback. And they had a couple third down pickups there that were really nice.
And I think part of that, too, was he was just bailing on passing plays. When you're bailing on passing plays and then, all the defensive guys are in coverage, he's like, well, look at this wide open space in the middle. And he did that a couple of times. He got like a 3rd and 15 conversion in the first half, and that's kind of what fueled one of their drives, too. And then, he tried for some deep passes in the first half that were a little bit ambitious. They did not work for him. But
some of those I was thinking, what was he expecting to happen on that one?
Mad respect, though, because you just go for it. You're playing the number 5 team in the nation, and you're...
With an excellent, experienced secondary,
and
too.
You're in the Mountain West, you're like, if we lose this game, we're expected to lose it. So we might as well go and throw, 40-yard bombs that are not at all accurate.
Yeah. There's really nothing to lose in a game like this for Colorado State, and I think they earned a little bit of respect here with the way that they hung in with Iowa for so long. Second half not so pretty, but I don't think there are many Mountain West teams who'd be going into halftime against the number 5 team in the country with a touchdown lead.
Well, and I think the most impressive thing about Colorado State was the way they eliminated Iowa's running game.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that Tyler Goodson did have 57 yards net gain, but, then, if you look at the team rushing yards, it's at like 54 because Spencer had like a negative 17-yard play. And then Charlie Jones, I think he like fumbled it and then had to go backwards and recover his own fumble for a negative 13-yard, a 13-yard loss. So then
and those add up.
Those add up. And so then, the whole entire rushing unit amassed only 54 positive yards.
Look at Iowa being this passing team all of a sudden here today, where they had, 224 passing yards? I don't think many people would have expected. If you would have given the number 54 and the number 224 and said one is going to be passing yards, one is going to be rushing yards, I don't know, maybe you even have that flipped a little bit.
Well, and I think that this is a second week in a row that Spencer has thrown for over 200 yards.
So he is showing a little more of that.
He did get his first pick today in 167 passes, according to Michael Loss, our columnist. We're giving him full credit. He was a little upset when we did it earlier tonight.
Yeah, he gave us a little bit of a hard time for that one. So,
yeah.
Yes, Mike gets all the credit on that one. But it was a win is a win.
A win is a win, and I think that's what all the players were trying to tell us was like, we know it wasn't pretty, but we'll make it prettier next time when we play in the Big Ten. So, I mean, that's the hope, at least. John, what were some of your takeaways from this offense? I mean, we got to see a lot of young guns today.
Yeah, I really loved what I saw from Keegan Johnson. I mean, a guy who hadn't had a college catch before today. And now he's a reliable deep threat for this Hawkeyes team. And he has more 40-plus yard plays than any other receiver does for Iowa. Any of them combined, because he had 2 and only 1 had happened before today.
Right.
So that's something that I think a lot of people thought was missing from that Iowa offense. I thought that it was kind of missing when they're kind of going for these short passes and you're kind of wondering, hey, eventually you're going to need a deep threat. And I think Keegan Johnson answered that.
It's funny because Iowa has talked for weeks, and even Brian Ferentz said this to us in spring practice. Yeah, big plays are great, but they're risky, right? They're less accurate. What kind of play does Spencer get an interception on? I just want to say this on record. A freaking screen, y'all. A screen play, okay?
A pass that was maybe 2 yards past the line of scrimmage.
Maybe. And it was it was a tight little, fit. It didn't really look like it was a good read. But Spencer actually looked better throwing deep.
Yeah.
Or at least maybe not better, but he looked good throwing the ball deep today. And I think that this offense should feel a lot more confident in giving him that kind of reign.
Yeah, and I think some of it, too, is you look at Colorado State. They're a team that's really good in that front seven. So I think that is some of it, where, okay, the opportunities aren't really going to be kind of like a week ago where Tyler Goodson was kind of breaking out for some big plays. Where this is going to be a team that you're going to beat Colorado State probably a little more so via the air. So I think some of that goes down to that. But it shows that, hey, it's a kind of tool in the toolkit here for Iowa's offense that we really hadn't seen, and based on even my Twitter mentions, I think people have been waiting to see.
Yeah, and I think, obviously fans want the big explosive plays, and even Spencer was saying you have a 60% chance of scoring when you have those kinds of big plays on your drives. Now, he says 60%, right, because that second one by Keegan, a couple plays later he gets that interception. But, Another person that I think we sometimes are guilty of neglecting week to week is Nico Reganey, who had a 38-yard reception today. Last week he had a 48-yarder. So he's also kind of one of those deep threats that Iowa doesn't always use. Charlie Jones is always pretty reliable in the slot, too, and he's kind of the guy who can pick up a couple extra yards after. Same with Tyrone Tracy. I wish they would use Tyrone Tracy a little bit more, too. But
he didn't get the ball much at all. I think it was 2 targets for 1 reception.
And then he did get that running play for a touchdown, which was good for him. I think he needed that kind of boost of morale because knowing Tyrone Tracy from the interviews that we've had this week, he's been feeling a little disappointed in himself. Yeah.
I mean, it seemed like there was more that he wanted when we talked to him on Wednesday. And, good for him to get that touchdown. We'll see. The interesting thing, I think, with this wide receiver group is it could be somebody different every game.
They have a lot of targets.
Because there's so much depth.
Yeah, they have a lot of targets. It's just funny because they're not in on every play, right? They're playing a lot of... they're just playing a lot of, they'll put 3 receivers out, and a couple of them are there to just block for a screen. So, it's one of those things where it's a competition for playing time, for sure, in that receiving core, and I don't know how they feel about it. I mean, we did see Jackson Ritter had a reception last week, too. So, we see a lot of different names coming up week to week. Sam Laporta had a much bigger week this week than he did last week.
And now he knows not to spin the ball.
Yeah.
So he learned it. Kirk Ferentz learned it. I learned it. I don't know about you. Maybe you already knew that spinning.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's new to all of us that spinning the football will result in an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty.
Right. And I mean, come on, we're letting the NFL celebrate, but we're not going to let the college kids celebrate, who are probably, quite honestly, a lot more creative, number one. Number two, it's college. Let them party. Let them celebrate the touchdowns.
Apparently not here. In Iowa City, which, if you ask the FS1 broadcaster today, is the capital of Iowa. So I don't know how you come to that conclusion, considering it hasn't been the capital of Iowa for more than a century, I think. So...
you'd think as a journalist, he'd do his research.
You would think. He also, what was it? He called Justin Jacobs Justin Jenkins.
Or Justin Jacobs, even though it's Justin. I mean, I know it's I know it's a subtle thing, but when you're a beat writer, you know, you're like, ooh.
And Jacobs and Jenkins?
Yeah.
Come on.
That's way off. Way off base.
You're not even in the right neighborhood.
Yeah. It's just, hey, TV, man.
Yeah.
TV. There are some good TV reporters out there, okay? We're just making fun of this one dude. So.
Yes. Well, Leah, it's been a great time. Your after the final score podcast.
Dang.
So.
Wow. That's, this is an abrupt ending. Even though I know it's been 13 minutes. It's been a hell of a 13 minutes. It's been a hell of an 8 months. Am I allowed to say hell on the podcast?
Why not?
You think Nathan will bleep it out if it's inappropriate for me to say hell on the podcast? I've now said it 3 times. They can't fire me. I'm leaving.
I feel like far worse things have been said in previous generations of Hawkeye football podcasts.
Well,
so I think we're probably okay.
I really want to end this on talking about special teams. Because I really like special teams. And I don't think I'm going to see special teams like this for a while. Shout out to Charlie Jones, who had 4 punt returns for 66 yards along of 38. As far as kick returns, I don't have all of the stats, but his longest was a 24-yard return today. So again, a big difference maker as far as field position. I really liked that 38-yarder. I felt like, he's fast. Not the fastest guy in the world. He's just incredibly smart with his footwork, and I was really impressed. If we go back and watch that play, I could go back and watch it a million times. He really reads his blocks well on that return. Torrey Taylor, not our favorite punting day out of Torrey Taylor.
No, what was that, 22-yarder that he had today? That one
That really
wasn't
brought
so
down
great.
the average, but he did have a 61-yarder. Which is not quite the 69-yarder he had a couple weeks ago. But it's fine. He will come back on top. What about the Colorado State guy? Do we have his on hand?
Yeah.
The Colorado State punter was something to be seen.
He was something else.
Yeah.
And the consistency here.
I'm putting
7 punts.
Yep.
51.1 yards on average. The longest one was 59 yards.
Okay, 59.
And 3 inside the 20. So not quite Ryan Stonehouse's, it was an 81 or 82-yard punt against Vanderbilt. So he's had better ones, but you look at it, he started today 3rd in the FBS for average yards per punt, and you see why.
Yeah.
That consistency, it helped Colorado State, I think, in the field position game, and maybe that kind of kept them in it a little longer.
Iowa also pinned a punt down on the 1 today.
That was
Terry
an impressive
Roberts,
one.
Special Teams All-American, as we call him here, or Scott Docterman. I think he coined the phrase last week.
He's been knocking on the door here if he's overhearing us using his term there.
Yeah, I just gave him credit. I just gave him credit. It's fine. But yeah, Terry Roberts had that big play today, and then I think everybody was wanting that safety when their running back got tackled in the end zone. But I think the rule is they have to not at all cross the line.
Yeah.
So,
it's been a testing of the rule book knowledge today between the spinning of the football, what exactly counts as safety versus not safety.
There's also that there was that weird 3rd and 11 play where they measured it 5 million times to finally give it to Colorado State, and I really thought he was short by at least 2 yards. That pass that reception by Trey McBride.
And part of it, too, is McBride does do an excellent job of, at the very last second, extending himself really well. It's something I noticed against Toledo, too, where it's wow, there are 3 defenders around him, in all probably within 5 yards of him, and he somehow squeezes in another 9 yards. So some of that might be just the fact that Trey McBride, he's going to be playing in the NFL soon. It's just a matter of fact. Unless he has some crazy injury, it kind of seems almost inevitable at this point. So maybe that one is a little different. But non-conference officially, but not really non-conference for our rules knowledge.
Yeah. Well, we've got more to say, but I'm going to leave it to John and to kind of wrap this up. And I just wrote a story about Jack Campbell, who had a career high of 18 tackles today. I think John wrote about Keegan Johnson.
Yes, I did. So you can read that as well online at thegazette.com.
Yeah. We're putting it behind the paywall. So
yes,
and then
pay for local journalism.
But John, it's been a pleasure.
Pleasure's been all mine.
And I wish you the best of luck on this beat. It's been an unforgettable 8 months.
Thank you.
I've learned so much. I really do enjoy covering this team. Can't believe we got the personal shout out from Kirk Ferentz today.
Yeah, you got quite the shout out there from him. He appreciated your women's basketball article.
He also asked me for her contact information. Sarah Bard, who's in my article, one of his original basketball players. He was like, "Oh, by the way, can you give me her number? I'd like to call her." So, that's testament to who Kirk is. He's just trying to connect with all these people from his life. And
probably hasn't heard from her in a while, so that'll be a nice phone call when that time comes.
It's truly an Iowa thing is these people never leave you, even if you try to leave them. And I learned that the first time I left Iowa, and then I came back. I promise y'all, though, I'm probably not going to move back, but I will be back, period, because I have 2 weddings so far that I know of that I have to go to within the next year, and I think there's a 3rd one on the horizon. So truly, I am never actually leaving behind Iowa.
It's what is it, Hotel California? You can check in, but you can never really leave.
Yeah.
What is it? So,
all right, John.
We could talk for another hour here, but Leah, thank you. To our listeners, thank you. I will be back with Mike from College Park next Friday. Before then, tune into another episode of Hawk Off the Press with a couple special guests.